Airport Security of Reddit. What's the weirdest experience you had while scanning luggage? Story 1. Elderly woman with a sword cane. She had no idea it was a sword. Her son was a service member and had sent it to her from the Philippines without mentioning what it was. A couple headed up to Alaska with a sink, complete with plumbing attached, in a large duffel bag. Hunter returning from Canada with some unlicensed kills. Unprepped and still bleeding severed muskox heads wrapped in plastic. Whole baggage system for half the airport had to be shut down and cleaned, along with a couple of our machines. One lady who spent the time her bag was in the x-ray screaming that x-rays weren't real, and there was a midget in the machine going through her bag to steal things. In cargo, an automatic grenade launcher built out of clear polycarbonate, so the arms dealer transporting it could show off its inner workings, would have been fine, if it hadn't been undeclared and accompanied by a small box of grenades. Story 2. TSA officer. Ma'am, I just got a look in your bag real quick. Oh, it's just it has electronics inside. It's just your soap. It's too big to go. I cannot make this up. The thing I tell new people is you can never be ready for what might happen every day. Saw a bag filled to the brim with all different types of spoons. Pulled it aside, asked the passenger what the deal was. He looked me straight in the face and says he uses them to spank his wife in bed. It's their spoons. Edit: when I said saw I meant while I was analyzing the image on the x-ray machine, I was not simply targeting the passenger by sight. Story 3. I used to work at Sydney Airport and we once found a 14-inch double-ended in the luggage of a couple from Turkey. The kicker was that both of the passengers were in their 80s. Story 4. I'm not airport security. But one time I was in the security line with my parents and little sister, and we got stopped because they found something in her bag. The person at the scanner opens my little sister's backpack and pulls out a rock the size of a grapefruit. He just looks at us and goes, "What's this?" And my little sister goes, "That's my pet rock." He put it back in the bag and told us we were good. She took her pet rock on the plane. My parents were totally mortified. Story 5. I'm not airport security, but I do have an interesting story. So I'm checking through airport security. In front of me was a woman in her 40s, I assume. I only have my laptop as carry-on, so I grabbed 2 trays. One for my laptop, the other for my shiz wallet faniqued. As I'm waiting for this lady to put her stuff in trays, she drops her purse. I'm not exaggerating whatsoever. About 100 condom packets fall out of her purse and spew across the floor. There were probably a lot more inside. Being the gentleman I am, I asked the woman if she needed help, and scooped up the condoms. TSA officers from all over were staring at her with wide eyes. Nobody said a word. Eventually we managed to get through, and I never saw the woman again. Story 6. In the early 90s, my family and I are trying to get back to the USA from Paris. At the airport they scanned all our luggage as part of the routine even back then. During the process the officials got pretty excited, upset, surprised we didn't speak much French and they spoke little English, but a number of them crowded around the monitor for one suitcase. They finally brought me over to the screen and pointed to an image on the x-ray. At the bottom of my wife's suitcase it appeared to be an outline of a pistol. As it turned out, it was my wife's curling iron with power cord rolled up just right, but I couldn't make them understand what I was trying to tell them, so I just pretended to curl my hair like I've seen my wife do with the thing. They started laughing and were so relieved it was nothing, so we were on our way quickly after that. Back when flying was actually fun. Story 7. Okay, I'm not airport security, but this is in the same sport of what you're asking. When we were coming back from Afghanistan, a few of us were tasked to serve as customs type people. We had to search bags for any non-authorized items. Things like weapons, war trophies, money, things like that. Anyway, it's hot as and I'm on like my 10th group of folks. We're going through the whole spiel and I get to the part where I have them all turn their sleeping bags upside down and shake them out. Well, out drops this huge purple from this guy's bag. It's enormous and it's rolled to a stop in the sand at my feet. I'm speechless. I know this guy. Worked like 2 seats away from him for a year. We're locked in eye contact. His face is mortified. There's a dozen other soldiers all around dumping their bags. None have noticed yet. I just yell out, "Okay, pack it up," and walk away like I didn't notice. If this guy planted that to smuggle some out, then he earned it, because I was not gonna mess with any more of that. We never spoke of it afterward. Story 8. There's a German security officer and bomb squad leader out there that can tell you the story of how I forgot I had a grenade-shaped lighter in my backpack as I went through the security checkpoint. Story 9. Not security, but a passenger. This one time when I was 17 to 18, I was going through the Palm Springs airport security when my bag gets pulled aside by one of the officers after I walk through the scanner. The man pulls the bag off the belt, then looks me in the eye and asks, "Is this yours?" To which I reply, "Yes." "Is there anything inside that I should be concerned about?" Slightly confused I respond, "No sir, I don't believe so." He then opens the bag, rummages inside until he pulls out a small box and asks me, deadpan serious, "What is this?" At this point I pick up just how much this officer is on edge. He was so tense. I swear he looked ready to charge me if I were to do so much as itch my chin the wrong way. The intensity emanating off of him was palpable, and I do my very best to hold my poise as I answer him with a straight face that is a soap on a rope. Sir, he proceeds to take the soap on a rope out of the box, and I explain how my dad gave it to me as a joke gift for my birthday. Seeing his tension diffuse slightly, I ask what the problem was. Literally tells me that soap has the consistency of C4 and the hole in the top was suspicious where rope met soap, so it was flagged as a potential bomb threat. Shortly after realizing the lack of threat and obvious misunderstanding, they let me through and I rejoined my family, soap on a rope and all. Story 10 Not airport security, but when I was 7, I put my plastic dinosaur toy into the scanner in a mall. The dude thought I put my big pet lizard into the scanner and got scared. The funny thing is, the dinosaur was an Allosaurus, placed sideways. It looked nothing like a lizard through the screen, but I could see that his reaction was genuine. Story 11 Not airport security, but the one time on a local flight everyone in the line had to wait at bag check because a man was trying to bring a large tire on his hand luggage. It didn't fit in the scanning machine, but they wouldn't let him take it through the detector either. The stubbornness stalemate eventually died off, but needless to say everyone was very upset. Story 12 Not security here, but I used to work as a baggage handler, now loading supervisor, and whenever we felt a vibration from a bag we had to get it inspected as it is a potential heat source and could start a fire. We cannot open it without security and the owner with us local regulations, so it was always a hassle. But we always got big grins and everything when we felt it. 910 times it was just a body groomer or something like that. Learned that vibrating dildos come in many different shapes and sizes thanks to that rare 110. Story 13 Two weirdest off the top of my head. I pull up the image of the bag and I see it's full of dildos, but plugs, and a necklace that I can tell says, apparently got pulled for a liquid container. Before I even open the bag the passenger says, don't worry, I'm not a prostitute, just a who likes to be prepared, me her, Mayor lube is over 3 ounces so it can't go her no problem. I can improvise later. Then she grabbed her bag and walked off like nothing happened. The other one involved a female coworker and a bag containing 2 glass dildos belonging to a middle-aged married couple. Husbando, please don't say we can't take those. She loves when I use one in each of her holes at the same time. Wife, while handing my female coworker a business card, dearie, and if we get to keep them, I'll give you a free demonstration when we get back. I could barely contain my laughter as my coworker tried to keep her composure. After 3 years I have tons of stories. For some reason the rubber foot fleshlight I got in checked baggage always stuck with me, as in a rubber foot with a hole for the where the ankle should be, and the full-fledged furry suit in a case alongside cans of Alpo dog food. Story 14 I was on an Air Force honor guard, not my story, but my buddies. We were going to be at a local airport, receiving the body of a kid who died. I don't know why we didn't just use the airstrip of the base, but whatever. When a body is received, the plane will land, our pallbearers will march out with a full color guard, and retrieve the body off the plane for transport to the funeral home. Part of this includes rifles, so, everyone got to the airport at around 8 p.m. They walk right up to security and explain that they're going to be needing to go onto the flight line, and that they have rifles, and a knife to cut the plastic wrap off the casket. The poor kid at TSA freaks out and calls his manager over. Apparently he heard we're going onto your flight line and we have rifles and not that we're the honor guard from AFB and we're here to an airman's body. Manager comes bounding over, and once he realizes what's going on, he starts cracking up and explains the situation to the poor kid. Apologies were exchanged, and the body was retrieved successfully. The funeral sucked though. I was on that one and it was heavy. I really felt for the parents. Story 15 I once saw an elderly Chinese lady bring a pizza on a domestic US flight and they had to roll the box through the scanner, which made my awful morning a wee bit brighter. Story 16 I was the traveler in this scenario, flying the UK to play some gigs with my violin. My violin is a typical acoustic instrument, with the addition of an LR Baggs pickup bridge. It looks kind of funky with the wires coming out of bridge and going to the 14 jack. Who boy did security freak the out over that one. Put the case through the x-ray machine, and was walked over to a room as soon as I identified it as mine. It was opened and the 3 TSA idiots were staring at it like it was a nuclear bomb. They wouldn't touch it, they questioned me, they screamed at me that I was lying and they wanted me to tell them what I was planning. I showed them my travel plans and my bookings in London and they huddled for a moment and then they made me play my violin. I think they were expecting an actual explosion. I just made their faces melt with my awesome fiddle style. They apologized profusely and let me get onto my gate. I had 2 minutes to spare. TSA is a pack of TSA thousands standing around, and it shows they don't know what a violin is. Story 17 obligatory not airport security, but I was in the Pittsburgh airport security area and watched an entire family dressed in custom Islamic Muslim clothing. Sorry, if this is not the proper phrasing, get pulled aside for additional screening. Thought they were just getting profiled until a TSA officer asked them to open a large carry-on bag they had. It was literally filled with bottles of mayo. Absolutely nothing else but mayo in a pretty big bag. No clue what happened after that, but they probably dumped it all. Story 18 flyer here. Was checking in at 4 a.m. for a flight. Had a firearm in checked baggage. As part of standard protocol, they pulled me aside for quick verification that it was packed in a locked hard case and swabbed my fingers. We found traces of explosive residue like gunpowder. Have a nice day, not even an issue. More of a hilarious brain fart by some poor soul who's probably sleep deprived and running on autopilot, so to speak. Story 19 9 times out of 10 it's an electric razor. But every once in a while of course it's company policy never to imply ownership in the event of we have to use the indefinite article, never your. Story 20 obligatory I'm a passenger not a TSA agent. When I was 8 years old we took a trip to California, and there were hundreds of snails all over the place. This fascinated me as there wasn't stuff like that in Minnesota, so I adopted 10 of them and carried them around on our trip, feeding them lettuce. Going through airport security I watched them go through the x-ray, and you could see them moving slowly around. This freaked out the agent and they called over a few people to search my bags. My dad just sat there laughing. And they pulled out a jar of snails. They laughed as well and let me keep them. So the snails lived happily ever after in a bowl of lettuce looking out the window at the snow. Story 21 obligatory not airport security. I was going to an interview, and decided to pack some fancy bath stuff for the hotel just for fun. As it turns out, a bar of soap packed next to phone chargers looks a lot like an explosive device on the X-ray. Not a huge deal and apparently pretty common, but they had to search the bag anyway, no problem. Until the security lady pulls out a Lush bag. What's this? It's a bath bee fizzer, a bath fizzer. She stared at me for a few seconds before it seemed to click what I was referring to. She finished the search and handed my bag back, bath bomb and all. Story 22 not security but a passenger. This isn't that weird but it still makes me chuckle. A few years ago I was in Amsterdam for about a month. Now, I love cheese as much as the next person, and I wanted to bring some different kinds of Gouda back to the US for myself, my friends, and my family. This was totally legal and all, I checked beforehand. But the customs agents thought it was hilarious when they opened my bag and I literally had 6 pounds of cheese, in cheese wheel form, in my suitcase. Got to keep the cheese and it was definitely worth it. Story 23 not airport security. But when I was 8 I packed about 5 different toy guns in my suitcase because I asked my dad if we could play guns as we called it, and he said we can later, so I figure he meant abroad. I gave everyone quite a scare LMAO, we were held up for an hour or two. Story 24 not airport security but they checked my carry-on bag when I had a 10-inch bad dragon with a tube. That was a fun interaction and extremely awkward. They let me go and that was that. I guess the weird werewolf shape made them think it was something else. Story 25 I live where there is no Trader Joe's, so when I do visit friends out of state, I bring an extra suitcase and load up. My bag was flagged for inspection after going through the X-ray. So I'm standing there and the TSA officer takes out my Jajos cookies, swabs the packaging, checks that it isn't cocaine, and shouts back to the X-ray guy, "Hey Eric, it was the Jajos." Story 26 not a screener myself but I huck bags for an airline. One day I threw a couple of bags on the screener and neglected to let the cat's Canadian version of TSA agent know that they had firearms and ammunition in them. I can only imagine the reaction of him shitting his pants when he had been sitting there all day, bored out of his mind, screening bag after bag, to suddenly see the giant outline of a shotgun in front of his face on his screen. He nearly broke the door down of his little hut getting out to grab the bag and looked at me like, "Is there a declared firearm in this bag?" To which I responded, "Yeah, should have mentioned that." Story 27 I went through security once and they pulled my laptop bag and were looking through it quite intently. Turns out I had forgotten I had kept a drafting compass in there. You know the scissor-like tool they has pencil holder on one end and a sharp metal point on the other, used for drawing circles. That's right, I said a sharp metal point. They looked at it and I was expecting them to confiscate it, but they just put it back and cleared me to fly. I'm thinking to myself, wow, you could probably stab someone in the carotid. Story 28 not security but I was quite upset about this. My brother always has a pocket knife on him. He just keeps it around because he gets the multi-tool ones with fingernail clippers, screwdrivers, and whatever else. Several times he has forgotten about them and had to throw them away before airport security. This one was a particularly thin wallet multi-tool and he forgot to take it out this time, so the security person just asks him if it's okay to throw it out and he moves on. End of story. Well, I go through security immediately after and I'm super prepared. Not a thing is out of place. The metal detector that you walk through goes off, so she pulls me to the side. Apparently the sweater I was wearing had a type of yarn that had the gold threads and the machines hate that. It looked like I was wearing chainmail under my shirt. 2 pat-downs later and having them check my shoes, luggage, etc. and I'm good to go. Still mad to this day that my brother went right through security with a knife and I spent 30 minutes there because of my terrible choice in clothing. Story 29 I got stopped in Denver once because they thought my underwater camera was a bomb. They all apologized and said, as you can imagine, we don't get a lot of underwater cameras in Denver. Story 30 I've got one being the passenger and not airport security. My dad, sister I used to travel a lot. I was probably 7, my second time ever being on a plane were in security, send our carry-on bags through, only to be reminded by TSA that I had a little manicure set in my bag with nail clippers, a file, etc. They reminded me by pulling me out of line, searching me in front of everyone while I'm crying confused as, I was mortified to say the least. Story 31 This happened within my first month of work. I had been done with my initial training and was sent out when the scanner read something that looked suspicious in someone's bag. When I took the bag aside and searched the suspicious item, it turned out to be a Toblerone bar. But just to be sure I opened it up and inside the box was 3 ounces of crack cocaine and a lighter. The guy booked it out of the airport, leaving all of his luggage behind. Story 32 Last summer my family and I flew to Singapore. I got my dad a dab cartridge THC concentrate the week prior. He brought it attached to the battery through Singapore customs. They pulled him aside and said, "Do you have a vape?" and he said yes, and they didn't bother to check exactly what it was. Smuggling marijuana into Singapore punishable by death. When I heard the man ask my dad, my heart stopped. Story 33 I remember once I was flying out of Melbourne when I was about 14 heading to Christchurch to meet up with my parents. So I put my bag on the tray for the X-ray machine, and the border force guy puts it through. I go through the metal detector, and wait for my bag to come out. Then the other border force guy who's looking at the X-ray screen calls one of his colleagues over, points at the screen, looks at me, laughs and pulls my bag aside and calls me over. I go up to him, and he looks me straight in the eye and says we don't allow screwdrivers on the plane. I'm pretty confused at that point, until he unzips the front pocket and pulls out my 12th Dr. Sonic screwdriver. Both him and the other guy are just themselves laughing. So then he asked where I got it and how much it cost because he wanted to get his son one for his birthday. He then handed my bag back and told me not to disassemble the plane while I'm up there. Story 34. I was the bringer, not the finder, but I nearly got but probed over a ham sammy. We were returning to the US from Medellin, Colombia. I knew we were likely to be disassembled, so I was prepared. I did not know it was the sandwich that would be my downfall. We were leaving from Bogota and I bought the sandwich of contention. It was dry and sad, and after a bite or so I was like, gross, pass. Somehow I forgot about it when the flight attendants did the last trash call. I felt bad just leaving a random warm ham sandwich on my seat, and wanted to throw it away myself since I'm not a savage. So I picked it up, planning to bin it on my way out. Tactical error. I ended up in customs still clutching my rejected sandwich. The customs dude was like, you can't have that, go down that escalator and dispose of it. I went down the escalator too. It was the bend me over and probe me zone. I had to retrieve all my for special screening that entailed a 7 black dude with giant hands, who took one look at me, cut off my garbled sandwich explanation and literally leered while snapping on his gloves with extra vinegar. He then laughed as off at my expression and was like, I'm just with you, just chuck your forbidden sandwich in the biohazard bin, I'm gonna x-ray your luggage again, and off you go. Don't bring international sandwiches, folks. Story 35. In the more innocent 1980s we cut some aluminium into the silhouette of a pistol and tucked it inside the lining of my mate's suitcase as he left for his honeymoon. He wasn't amused. He was less amused by the frozen trout somebody snuck into his car which didn't last too well parked in the sun for 2 weeks. Story 36. Obligatory, not airport security. I remembered my mini Swiss Army knife on my keys and mailed it back despite the fees. It was my good one with a bunch of extra things on it. Realized I accidentally got my key knife looks like key, is small knife and pepper spray through security sometime later. I habitually kept the pepper spray in my backpack, and put it in my pocket when not carrying my backpack, so I did that when I got to my destination. Fast forward a couple days and I'm at the doctor's office. My pepper spray is in my pocket and I have to lie face first on the table so the doctor can check my knee. I empty pockets and ask my dad to hold the stiff. He takes one look at the pepper spray and asks, did you bring this home? I blink a couple times. Yep, we all got a good laugh out of it. Realized the key knife a couple seconds later. Story 37. So I was traveling with my dad on a domestic flight and we get to security and my dad always carries food with him. He leaves it in as usual and his backpack goes through. The lady pulls him aside to check his food to make sure there's nothing funny in the food and making sure he's not carrying seeds and whatnot. My dad's carrying almonds and the lady takes the almonds out and gives them a very thorough check. My dad, never having that much attention drawn to a bag of his almonds, asked if everything was good and she says trying to hold back laughter, your nuts look fine sir. My dad smirks. She's turning a bit red, I'm smirking, we head to our gate. Story 38. Not mine, but a friend of mine who worked at customs security as head chief was supervising the scanned luggage. Suddenly a guitar belonging to an old lady probably mid-70s according to my friend's description comes in through the scanner, and they noticed there was something inside the guitar in the interior, but they couldn't see what it was so he decided to make a security check once it was on the other end of the scanner. And so he did, but when he asked her to open up the guitar case she became really nervous and avoided all sorts of eye contact as if she was truly frightened. My friend noticed this but didn't say much because he wanted to keep things as calm as possible, so he proceeded to open up the case. He then removed the strings and finally introduced his hand through the hole and almost instantly felt something in there. Turns out the lady just couldn't find the proper place to put her so she hid it in the guitar. When my friend realized this he struggled to hold his laughter and said something along the lines of, "Miss, the next time you bring your radio with you make sure to remove the batteries before the flight." Story 39. Had a guy ask if it was okay to bring tomahawks through screening. He kept saying it's on the bone. Here I'm thinking it's 6 throwing tomahawks up until he opened his bag to show me. Never have I ever felt more like a... Story 40. Not me, but my brother, as a passenger, found out the hard way that summer sausage and pepperoni sticks packed in the bottom of a carry-on look like plastic explosives to the X-ray machines at the airport. Story 41. Not security, but when we went on our honeymoon 6 years after marrying to Italy, my husband went through the body scanner and set it off. He took off his belt and went through again and it went off. He took off his watch and went through again and it went off. At this point, 3 policemen with guns turned up. I was terrified. Turned out to be his lucky fake coin in his body warmer. Yes, it was the 80s, which he never thought to remove. Lucky, yeah, right? Story 42. Obligatory, not security. I work in film production and was traveling with my gear. We were going to be in remote places, so I brought a block battery. This is basically an electric wheelchair battery in a sealed Pelican case with connector ports on the side. I intentionally purchased a TSA-approved sealed gel cell battery that does not leak and is made specifically for wheelchair users to be able to go on planes with them, and it had labels on it depicting this, and it came with paperwork. The Pelican case is also gasket and is basically leak-proof. I bring it up to the baggage check-in area and the guy was acting like I had set a cartoon-style time bomb in front of him. Word salads ensued about how batteries cannot be on planes and blah blah blah. 3 people were assessing the situation. I was brought to a special baggage area where they insisted that the battery must go in this special TSA Ziploc, taped all up. then into a TSA box thingy that had acid-absorbing stuff all inside it. I barely made my flight because of this. Meanwhile, no less than 3 dudes came through with assault rifles and breezed through like it was nothing. Story 43. A guy I work with has a brother who is some bigwig at the TSA. He had my coworker bring a pressure cooker with a brick of C4 wrapped in tinfoil and a couple copper wires and a Timex watch hastily shoved into a duffel bag through security in the Cleveland airport. They did catch him, and my coworker only had to spend about 2 minutes in handcuffs. Story 44. Gotta be a little older to understand this one, but right after 911 I got pulled aside and grilled over a phone charger that plugs into a car cigarette lighter. The stupid agent had no idea what it was, and I wasted 10 minutes trying to explain it to her. Story 45. Not a security, but some guy a couple people away in the line got taken away for having a suitcase full of only bananas. No clothes or anything else, just bananas. Extremely sus if you ask me. Story 46. Passenger, not security. When I was younger I had trouble with anxiety, so when my family would fly out to my grandma's house for Christmas I would bring a weighted stuffed animal, a regular stuffed animal, but stuffed with aquarium rocks instead. The first year we traveled with it, the security people started to get very concerned because the material showed up like a bomb or something. They were very vague about it, so they took my mom's bag for the chemical test, and of course my meds ended up being right next to it. They set off the chemical test, so my mom was interrogated and strip searched before they let her on the plane. After that I always put Charles in a separate bin and they tested him every time. Story 47. I once went through airport security with my backpack, and the security guard pulled me to the side and took a quick look through my bag only to pull out a full bottle of barbecue sauce that I had forgot to put in the fridge before going to the airport. Story 48. I was a passenger flying to Colorado. Took a 2-piece flea rod fishing in a reel-on case. A TSA officer looked at it and said he thought I was transporting a 5-foot-long. I laughed, he didn't. Good times. Story 49. Obligatory, not security, but, because I'm not security, but based on the guy's face I gave him a story to tell. My wife is Chinese. We grew up in the SF Bay Area and moved to the Midwest. One year I was visiting home, and my MIL and FIL bought some of my wife's favorite food so I could take it home to her. Because, while it's easy to get in California, we couldn't get it in the Midwest. I pack it in my carry-on luggage, go through security, and get stopped because, you see, my wife's favorite food is duck tongue. Which doesn't do it justice because when purchased it's really more like the lower jaw of the duck, so there's a ton of bones and it probably looks suspicious as on an x-ray. So the TSA agent holds up the opaque cold box and says, "What is this, duck tongue?" His face just kind of falters and I can almost hear the gears grinding in his brain before it spits out it does not compute, and he responds, what? I helpfully respond, "It's duck tongues. Blank look like, the tongue of a duck, blanker look, quack." He looked at the box, put it back in the bag, and told me I was cleared to go. Side note: duck tongue is a pain in the to deb one and eat, but it's delicious. Story 50. Let's see. Baby living in carry-on. Parents deposited capsule into belt with blanket covering child. Baby passed on and in a coffin, was checked in, airline did not know, was huge blow up, hidden in suitcase. Placenta. This one is easy as security. Honestly, I did not care what you took where as long as it did not kill, maim or blow up the plane in transit. Placenta taken home to the homeland and eaten or buried. Personal fans. Our code for personal adult stress reliever, more common in checked in luggage record as 13 in one bag. Story 51. I was fortunate enough to witness one of those vibrator in the carry-on pranks. Felt bad for the dude because he looked like he was dying on the inside. Story 52. I once had to fly from Canada to the States with my cat. Of course I brought a travel litter case with a zipper so he could go potty between flights and such. The case was filled with a crystal type of litter. I went through security and they pulled me aside. They said they needed to know what was in this case. I said well, it's a travel cat litter box, and you should be warned there is fecal matter and urine in it. I was so embarrassed, but we were laughing about it. He said he was new and his coworkers were teasing him. He had to open it and take samples of the crystals and the cat turds and drip 3 different colored liquids onto the samples. He also swabbed my hands. He eventually cleared me and I apologized profusely and went on my way. Story 53 is passenger, not airport security. I'm an amateur photographer and have a wild bunch of stuff I don't know how to use yet, including a crystal ball. This thing is the size of a tennis ball, and on the x-ray machine it appears as this big green ball. Every time I've been through the x-ray, they've stopped me about the wanky art photo crystal ball, but not the hand grenade-shaped paracord survival kit that contains a knife and matches and fishing hooks. Story 54. I had to search through a bag because the machine scanned a person's bag and it looked like they had bullets in their bags. Not bullets but 6 kilos of Cheeto Puffs. Story 55. More terrifying than weird, but my mom used to help check in bags for an airline. Once a very rich client was running late and they didn't have time to send his bags through the usual processes, so they decided to just do a visual by opening the bag. This was in the 1990s. The suitcase was full of pornography, and it was children. The police were called and the man was arrested. It haunts me still because if they had sent the bag through a metal detector instead they probably wouldn't have caught him. Story 56. As a passenger some years ago I flew out of Manchester, UK back home. Usual deal with belts and bags, so I put my backpack in the tray with the other items, go through the scanner, and this security lady asks me if my bag was my bag. So I'm like yes, not really caring too much, and she asked if she could take a look inside. Sure. I said fairly sure there was nothing in there that they do not allow. So she opens it and pulls out a 34 bottle of water which I had totally forgotten I still had in there. Oh, I forgot that one, you can throw it away, sorry. I said, I mean, it was just a plastic bottle I had refilled a few times. So instead of that, she opens it, takes a sniff, closes and puts it back in my bag without a word. Now I got a creative mind, so I could instantly come up with a lot of substances that could have been in there that would not smell off. Oh, and once in Paris at the Louvre Museum, these is this massive K outside and I was like, WTF. There is another door right there I see people use, so I do the logical thing, go to that door, go inside and down to get my tickets, enjoy the museum. On my way out, I notice how the K is all people with bags to have them x-rayed. Now I almost never go anywhere without a backpack and that day was no exception. I had walked in and out with my bag clearly on my back and no one batted an eye, so yeah, going through security tends to make me smile more so than anything else these days.